What's up, everybody? It's the homie Truth Teller, the Street Reporter, and today we gonna touch on a topic that I've been getting a lot of DMs and Twitter mentions and X and all kind of shit about this topic. So I had to sit back and research this for a little while because this one kind of seemed a little different because if I'm not mistaken, the killer was caught in this case. So it was things about this case that already felt like it was settled, so it was no reason for me to kind of dabble in it. But I guess even though the killer was caught and he was eventually convicted and shit like that, I guess the full story is not out because, you know, people are still claiming innocence, or when you work out a deal, you don't really tell all the information or whatever the fuck. So a lot of people wanted me to tackle this. Now, you got to remember, I wasn't there, and this is one of those cases that kind of happened early in the culture, like really before the culture really popped off. So, you know, I had to rely on a lot of interviews that I did with people who was close to this situation. I hear a lot about ZekoWorld, and a lot of songs and shit like that. I also hear a lot of people dissing a guy by the name of Zeko in their songs and shit. So a lot of people wanted me to take Zeko to the board, kind of explain to you exactly who he was, what their neighborhood means and shit like that. So today we gonna talk about a guy named, I believe his name was Isaiah Walker. You guys know him as Zeko. When he ended up losing his life, to show respect to this young man, they kind of renamed the community ZekoWorld. So you hear that a lot in songs like that and shit. But when I listened to that, I also heard a lot of the ops dissing, you know, Zeko. I hear a lot of that shit from like, I even heard it from like Rondo number 9, 600, a lot of the BDs. So Zeko name has been name dropped in a lot of diss songs. Okay? That's one of the first things I automatically noticed when I kind of typed this name in and did shit like that. I also noticed that he was a part of that 051 community, 051 Young Money, which is like a set on the, I guess, south side of Chicago, around that Indiana area over there in like the 50s and shit like that. That area became famous actually because they actually, and it's said too, when I say famous, y'all finna think I'm talking about famous because they got a guy who was drafted in the league. Or you think I'm finna say famous because they got a famous guy who became a movie star. No, that neighborhood ended up becoming famous because some guys from this neighborhood was responsible for killing L.A. Capone. So this neighborhood had a rap. Being like, you know what I'm saying, vicious. And a lot of people credit 051 Young Money with creating the BDK movement. Now, I'm not going to say that's true because, you know, the killing and the warring been out here way before that rap shit happened. But this is what I hear throughout the rumors in the streets. And I guess it's because they're linked to, I guess, murders with a lot of prominent members. Not like, you know, young soldiers, but a lot of prominent members who, I guess, meant something to the crew. And that's kind of sad that people is taking that shit as like a reward or almost like a trophy. But that's how it is in the Chirac drill culture. The shit get kind of sinister if you ask me. But I noticed this instantly. Another thing I noticed about Zeko was that he was young. I'm not sure exactly, but I do believe he was 18 years old. So I believe this guy was very, very young when he ended up losing his life. Another thing about Zeko that I noticed was their neighborhood was entrenched in a gang war. You know, this neighborhood is like in the middle of, you know, a lot of BD sets in those neighborhoods, and they like right like dab in the beginning and middle of it. So, you know, they was in war with a lot of people, and if I'm not mistaken, 051 Young Money has a lot of more prominent members like 051 Melly, a lot more guys that you guys know like Fats who ended up losing his life. I believe we got Driller right now who's doing real good in the music culture. So, and you see how he be dissing people in the raps and shit like that. So, if I'm not mistaken, the police is claiming, first off, before we get into that, after I got to looking at some of the police reports, some of the newspaper articles, a lot of documentaries and shit that a lot of these guys in Chicago be putting together on these stars and shit, these drill stars. Unfortunately, when he died early in the culture. So lately, it's been a lot of people coming on the blog networks talking about his death, who knows him. So I had a lot of information to go off of. But according to an interview, if I'm not mistaken, someone in his family did an interview with the Chicago Sun-Times where they just spoke. And they said that he actually didn't even live out there. He was an hour at college. He was an hour somewhere going to college. Okay, and he came out here for like a weekend or something to kick it. He went to go get his hair cut, and he kicked it with his people. You know what I'm saying? Now that's what the family's saying. Okay, now I'm not saying that brother wasn't coming out here doing no bad shit, wasn't coming out here drilling niggas and doing all kind of wild shit while he was out here. I ain't saying that ain't happened either. I'm just saying this is what I seen in the, you know, the interviews when I got to doing my homework and shit like that. Okay, now they said he was doing all this shit. He wasn't even really living out here anymore, okay? The police is claiming, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, on September 27th, okay? They're saying that Zeko was with his homie and he ended up going to a McDonald's, okay? And while he was in the McDonald's, I believe that McDonald's was on the 700 on a, I believe it was the 700 block of East. Got a lot of information in my head, y'all gotta hold up. Yeah, he was on the East 47. That's where he was at. He was on the 700 block of East 47, okay? They claiming that an altercation happened. They claiming that this guy was at McDonald's. You know, when you go to Mickey D's, you go get some food and shit. This Chirac, you get hungry out there. So they claiming that the young man and somebody else went to McDonald's to go get some food or whatever the fuck. Next thing you know, an altercation happened in a parking lot. It's wild. I guess it's arguing, it's beefs, it's all kind of shit happening in the parking lot. Next thing you know, black. They get to blinking in the McDonald's. It's regular people, man. It's community people in this fucking McDonald's. It's people going to get food before they go to work. It's people going to get some food for their kids and shit. These people ain't gang members who in them drive-thrus and shit. Them regular civilians, them citizens, them community people getting terrorized like that by the shootings and shit going on in the neighborhood. But next thing you know, Zeko took multiple shots, okay? He took multiple shots, right? He was killed. You following me? So he ended up losing his life in the parking lot. He was shot multiple times. Ended up losing his life. The killer eventually gets away. Okay? Now, but eventually, the killer get caught. Okay? The killer get caught. The FBI looks into this case because they hear about the murders that's going on the south side of Chicago. They hear how he died, how he lost his life at a McDonald's. The FBI looks into the case. They do all their extra resources with the local police. They end up catching the guy, I believe some months later in Indianapolis. Somebody say they seen him in a relative crib. They come barge up in that bitch, get him. He goes to jail. He loses, now he's finna lose his life in the crime system. So it seems like this case is done. So when I look at the shit, you know, one thing that's missing out of this shit, and I always say, when you leave, that be the most dangerous shit that can happen. Because shit don't be the same when you come back. You fuck around, leave, and everything done change. I see it with niggas who go to jail and come back and then continue life like it was for they went to jail. They end up losing their lives. See, people don't understand why you gone. It's things that transpire that can end up happening while you locked up and you don't even understand and realize that shit. Then you come back home acting like shit the same and end up losing your life. I believe this guy was still doing his thing in Chicago, chilling, but I believe he had another life out there in Alva. I believe that took a lot of his time too. He had another life. He was out there doing that shit. I believe he came back. He, you know, having so much shit on his mind. It's just in my opinion. I believe this guy went to a McDonald's that he clearly shouldn't went to. He knows he shouldn't been there. You know, he went to this McDonald's. I believe an altercation happened in the McDonald's. He ended up losing his life. If you ask me, he walked into his rivals. Okay, or his rivals walked into him. I believe this was a case of rivals synced each other, and next thing you know, a shootout happened. But unfortunately, they didn't have a gun. Okay, I believe that's exactly what happened. I believe this was gang related, like a lot of it is. But I just believe in this case, though, I believe the most craziest shit and shit that you hope don't never happen. You be in a situation where you on the bus, you in the store, you at a nightclub, and your op walk in there and you don't got it on you. And I believe this was the situation that happened at that McDonald's. I believe the guy who took his life was by the name of Aki Washington. Okay? The guy who took his life name was Aki Washington. He was 28 years old. Okay? The man who murdered him was 28 years old. Zeko was only 18. The guy who killed him was 10 years older than him. That nigga didn't go to the same school as him. They wasn't in the same classroom together. They didn't like the same girl. This was some straight gang banging shit inherited from different neighborhoods. That man probably never even knew Zeko. Zeko probably never even knew that man, but they knew each other's hoods. They was warm with each other's hoods. They was probably shooting at his hood. His hood was probably shooting at their hood. They had beef. They had war, even though they probably never knew each other physically, probably. Now, I'm not saying they did know each other. I know y'all gonna say, man, he knew that nigga. I'm not saying he didn't, but I'm just saying that's a big age gap right there. I believe when you see the age gap like that and it ends up in a drive-by and the age gap like that, it was clearly gang-related. I believe they were rivals. The only reason a 28-year-old dude would want to stoop that low to murder an 18-year-old guy, you know, it has to be he in his mind, he still got that young boy vibe where he believes this is his rival. I done seen it. Look, it's some men who 50 years old who still be saying shit like, bro, shit, we don't go over there, like around there on 46, we don't go over there, boy. We in tour with them niggas. How you in tour with somebody in your ass damn near 50? Like, you gotta really think about that. Don't let that shit go over your head. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's the homie truth. Bleh, 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 bleh.